This is Brian, Atlanta Hot Tub Center and Tub Talk 101. And today, by popular demand, we are going to discuss and talk about how to fix airlock in your hot tub. Now, airlock is commonly found when you do a fresh fill or after a drain and refill. And that's because people tend to just throw the hose into the body of the hot tub, and that fills the front side first, and an air bubble can get trapped inside of your motor when you do that. And so when you turn your motor on, you can actually hear it running, but it's not pushing any water, right? The proper way to fill it would be through the actual filter compartment or the filter well, and then that way you're filling it from the backside, right? And then that way you would not have an airlock in your motor, right? Now, the trick here is you will know almost instantaneously if you have airlock when you go to turn it back on and you hit that jet button, and you're gonna hear it. It's gonna be quiet, but you're gonna kind of hear the motor running, and you're gonna be like, hey, why don't I have anything coming out of all the jets? But you can hear the motor actually running. That is basically airlock, right? And so how do you get air out of a motor? So first things first, there are self-priming motors out there. So a lot of times you want to give the motor just a second. You don't want to run it dry for any long period of time, or run a motor with airlock for any long period of time, right? You wouldn't want to do that. It could damage the motor. But sometimes you do want to give it a second to see if it's going to pick up a prime, right? If it picks up a prime, then of course your jets will all come back on and run. So if you're going to do that, it's important that you have the waterfall open, that you have your jets open, that you have everything open so that you are contributing to or helping the motor catch a prime. But if it just simply won't, how do we get the air pocket or the air bubble out of the motor? So let's take a look. What I have here is a motor, obviously. Real quick, I'm not going to get into, copper windings and armatures and capacitors and all that stuff today, but I do want to explain how a motor actually operates, okay? This is an electric motor, okay? When you send power to it, it has a shaft down the middle of it, and that shaft starts to spin, okay? Now, most of these motors are anywhere between 1 and 5 horsepower. It doesn't take much to stop that shaft from spinning. Just so you guys know, you could have a different issue, but again, if it's airlock, okay, let's stick with that. If it is airlock, you got to get the air bubble out of this wet end. So again, you've got the motor. When you send power to the motor, the shaft spins. On the end of the shaft, you have an impeller, which you can kind of see inside of here, okay? That impeller spins, and of course, water comes into the intake, okay? Then it spins it, right? Gets it spinning, and then it comes out of the discharge, okay? So here's your intake, here's your discharge. The discharge is what pushes the water out, of course, pushes it to the jets and creates the pressure and so forth. Okay, so this is your motor with the shaft in it. This is considered to be the wet end or the pump. Okay, a lot of people refer to the pump as the whole thing. A lot of people refer to the motor as the whole thing, but simply put, motor, wet end. And what we're trying to accomplish here is we want to get the air pocket or the air bubble out of this wet end. Okay, so how do we do that, right? Well, first things first, you'd want to turn off the hot tub. Okay, then you would want to come over to this, and there's different tools that we use, but I want to highlight something. This, and I just have this staged, this is a union. This is a pump union, okay, that goes on to either side. Now, a pump union screws on like that, okay, and then it has an O-ring here. So it's important that you don't loosen these up too much. We're going to talk about that in a second, how to kind of repair it and get it going. But you don't want to lose this O-ring in the process, or you'll never get it to stop leaking, okay? So first, let's talk about where to start. Step 1, go ahead and turn your breaker back on. Try to turn the motor on that has airlock with the jets open, waterfall open, and see if you can get it to catch a prime. You'll hit the jet button, you'll let it run for 10-15 seconds. You don't want to let it run long, then you would want to shut it off, okay? Then leave it shut off for a period of time, and then, you know, say a couple of minutes, and then turn it back on and see if you can get it to catch a prime. You would want to at least do that 3 or 4 times to see, because most of these motors are self-priming, to see if you can get it to catch a prime before you go into the actual motor compartment. If you have a hot tub where you turn the breaker on and it immediately comes on, then you would want to go forth, and if it comes on, it starts trying to go through that priming cycle, right? That self-priming cycle. You would want to turn it on. Again, leave it 15, 20 seconds. If it doesn't pick up a prime, then you would want to turn around, turn it back off, and you'd want to, you know, do that process a few times, just like you would if you didn't have a self-priming hot tub like that, right? If that makes sense, because it's just different levels of programming, okay? All right, so that's step one. Once you do that and you kind of come to the conclusion that, hey, I'm not going to be able to get this air bubble out of there that way, then you'll need to take the motor compartment door off and locate the motor that has the airlock. Locating that motor shouldn't be very difficult, just because of the simple fact that you'll hit the jet pump and you'll be able to feel the motor, you know, working. However, it's not pushing any water, so you'll be able to figure out which jet pump it is, okay? Once you determine that, you're going to locate these unions, okay? You got a union here and you got a union here, one on the intake, one on the discharge. And you are going to take a tool. This is a strap wrench, okay? That's a tool that would work. This is more of a custom tool that we use. I doubt you're going to have one of these, but these are called union pliers. It's actually for this specifically. But oil wrench pliers, you can buy these at any hardware store, right? Or there's another method, but if you use this method, you got to be really, really, really careful. And I always suggest hiring a professional, guys. I mean, that's really what you should do. It's just going to make things significantly easier. They have gone through this process so many times that it's just a walk in the park for them. But so here, right? Everybody's got a couple of these, a hammer and a flathead at home. Again, you got to be really careful if you do this, because you wouldn't want to crack the union. But to get it loose, right, because it's been on there for a long time, you can tap it ever so slightly, right, until it comes loose, right? And once it starts coming loose, you can get your hand on there, right, and start loosening it up a little bit. You've got to be careful, guys. You don't want to come all the way off with this union. If you come all the way off with this union, you're going to have a flood, the O-ring's going to fall out, and you're just going to be struggling, right? So you want to avoid that. But if you loosen it ever so slightly and you listen, you'll actually be able to hear the air. It'll go shh, and then all of a sudden you'll see some water trickle out, and you want to tighten it back up, okay? Now, at this point, you got to make sure the tub's off when you're doing this. Okay, but at this point, you would once you heard the air come out and you tighten this back up, then you would go back over to your breaker panel. You're gonna turn the breaker back on, right? And you're gonna try to engage the motor. And again, you may have to try it a couple of times, like we were talking about originally, right? Turn the motor on a couple of times and see if you can get it to pick up a prime. If it doesn't, then you have more air in there that you need to get out, and you have to repeat the process. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna turn it back off. You're going to loosen this union back up, right? And you're going to let some air out. And then you're going to tighten it back up. Now remember, you don't want to get it completely tight, guys, until after you know the airlock's out, right? So when you're tightening this back down, just get it good and hand tight. Just get it good and hand tight. Don't go an extra quarter turn like we suggest on these unions. Don't go that extra quarter turn until you got that airlock out of there. Now, if you're still struggling and you got to go a little bit more drastic, what you could do is you loosen up this union, okay? Wow, I got a pretty good hand tight there, didn't I? You can loosen up this union, right? And also loosen up the top union, okay? Just to make sure that you're really getting all the air out of there. But most of the time, guys, what I have found is I can very easily loosen up this one union once or twice, tighten it up, the airlock's out, and you're all set. Jet pump comes back on, catches a prime, and you're good to go. This is Brian at Atlanta Hot Tub Center and how to get airlock out of your hot tub. Thank you.